A historic peace deal is signed, and people go out to protest against peace in the Middle East almost immediately. Joe Biden has an interesting choice in the song that he uses to come out for Hispanic Heritage Month, and he gets ripped up and down over this. A Chinese virologist comes out and makes a very, very, very deep claim over on Fox News, even deeper than the one that she's already made. And the Daily Wire is going to move out of California. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, folks. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We've got a fair amount of stuff to get to today. There's some pretty big stuff that happened yesterday. Not a lot of big stuff, but there is some pretty big stuff that happened yesterday. So we will definitely get into this. We'll definitely talk a bit about that, and we'll talk about why people are protesting peace in the Middle East that they've been calling for literally my entire life. But before we get started, head on over to freedomscoop.com. FreedomScoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We carry the Daily Ignoramus, which apparently is supposed to be spicier in the first hour, so we'll see if we can push through so we can get over there and just see what all the spice is. We also carry the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the Freckles and Brit Show, the Generational Gap, now on their new night, Wednesday nights. We also carry the R-Rated Conservative, so come on over and check us out, pick up some of our swag, and help us support great creators. Alright, let's get into the news here, starting off with the Dow. Now, the chart right there looks like I got lazy and I didn't get the chart pulled up until after 7:30 like I usually do, where they've changed it to the previous close is today's open. But that is actually not the case. The previous close was 27,993.33, and yesterday's close was 27,995.60. So we had a little bit of an up day. It dropped off at the end, and it closed just about exactly where it was the day prior. 0.0081% was the increase over yesterday. So they landed pretty much right where they needed to be in order to stay positive, barely. But it looks like the futures are jumping up off of this here, so we'll see what the investors say the futures and the rest of the market could do today here. From IBD, Dow Jones futures jump on coronavirus treatment news ahead of Fed decision. Buffett-backed Snowflake IPO to debut from Scott Latonin. Dow Jones futures rallied 175 points early Wednesday ahead of the Federal Reserve's interest rate decision on coronavirus treatment news. Dow Jones leader Apple rallied while Tesla raced 7% higher on Tuesday's tech-fueled rally. The Warren Buffett-backed Snowflake IPO priced above expectations late Tuesday. FedEx soared 10% on earnings while Nikola dove 7% on a Justice Department probe in pre-market trade. The tech-heavy NASDAQ outperformed with a 1.2% gain on Tuesday, advancing for a second straight day. The S&P 500 rose 0.5%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average edged less than 0.1%, or 2 points. Yeah, they went absolutely next to nothing, just like we said. Among stock market leaders, Apple and Microsoft rallied 0.2% and 1.6% respectively. Tesla jumped 7.2%. Meanwhile, rival Nikola dove 8.3% on an SEC investigation. Nikola tumbled another 7% early Wednesday after the Wall Street Journal reported the Justice Department is joining the SEC's investigation. Apple, Microsoft, and Tesla are IBD leaderboard stocks. You know, it's kind of nice having the window open at some point because it's cool enough to keep it cool inside the studio here, but either the train or the helicopter traffic that for whatever reason goes over this small town in Wisconsin, I don't understand, but it always does leak through. Alright, let's keep going here. Apple, Microsoft, and Tesla are IBD leaderboard stocks. Warren Buffett-backed Snowflake priced its IPO late Tuesday. It will debut on Wednesday. Stocks in or near buy zones are Agnico Eagle Mines, DraftKings, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing. So, tech, gold, and sports betting. After the close, Adobe and FedEx are reported earnings results. Adobe moved up 2%, while FedEx soared nearly 10% in pre-market trade. Early Wednesday, the Dow Jones futures were up 0.6% versus fair value, while S&P 500 futures gained 0.6%. Nasdaq 100 futures rose 0.5%. Remember, overnight action in Dow Jones futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. The two-day Federal Reserve meeting began Tuesday. The central bank has set the table for this week's meeting with its major policy shift unveiled on August 27th, embracing a 2% average inflation target. Investors will be focusing on what the Fed plans to do about keeping long-term interest rates low. Hey, we're gonna try and force a 2% average inflation target, but Congress is just gonna keep printing that fucking money. Early Wednesday, Eli Lilly said data from its Blaze 1 clinical trial showed a reduced rate of hospitalization for coronavirus patients treated with its neutralizing antibody drug. Eli Lilly jumped almost 3% in morning trade. The stock is tracing a flat base with a 170.85 buy point. The Fed's decision and policy statement will be released at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That is 1 p.m. Central Time, the actual real time zone. So, that's what we're seeing up off of there, and the futures are jumping up on the possibility of some news of the coronavirus treatment and the Fed's decision. So we'll see what happens later on today. I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the morning here. Let's keep going. From CNBC, S&P 500 and NASDAQ close higher as tech leads broad market gains from Fred Imbert and Jesse Pound. Stocks rose on Tuesday, building on a strong performance from the previous session on the back of broad market gains and solid economic data. The S&P 500 gained 0.5% to close at 3401.20, and the Nasdaq Composite advanced 1.2% to 11,190.32. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed just above flatline at 27,995.60 after rising as much as 237 points. Microsoft jumped 1.6%, Amazon and Alphabet each rose 1.7%, Netflix gained 4.1%, and Facebook closed higher by 2.4%. Tesla shares, meanwhile, popped 7.2% after surging more than 12% on Monday. Tuesday marked the second straight solid performance for big tech after the group's sharp sell-off last week, which pressured the broader market. Other parts of the market participated in Tuesday's move higher. The S&P 500 real estate and utility sectors were up 1.4% and 0.7% respectively. Hey, that means people are buying houses and paying back their utilities that they haven't been able to do for the last 6 months. So, hey, that's a good sign. Materials, industrials, and healthcare were also higher. The market is doing its best to prove that the buying the dip is still in vogue, said Frank Capillari, executive director at Instanet. The bottom line is that the market continues to have broad participation, and that's the most crucial characteristic to maintain going forward. So, yeah, people are coming in and buying. They actually want to be involved in this. They want to get their retirements up, and they want to see if they can make money off of this because, you know what? The government shut everything else down. So watch the stock, see if you can make some money off of it, and see what we can do to keep the sector going. All right. That's what I have on stocks news today. Just a sec. Sorry about that. The allergies kicked in again today. I sneezed like 9 times before we went live today. And the Zyrtec is starting to kick in. Finally. Let's see what the big news of the day. CNN shames Trump's large crowd, little social distancing at White House event marking the historic Middle East peace deal. Now, I didn't see any stories talking about the Middle East peace deal, but they definitely wanted to criticize what the crowd was doing outside of that, so let's see what they have to say over on Fox News from Joseph A. Wolfson. CNN appeared to bury the lead by sounding the alarm on the large crowd and little social distancing at the White House event commemorating the historic peace deal between Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain. On Tuesday, President Trump was joined by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, UAE Foreign Minister Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, I'm just going to call him Abdullah from here on out, and Bahrain Foreign Minister Khalid bin Ahmad Al Khalif. Wow, why do they have such long names over there? To sign the Abraham Accords, something the president hailed as the dawn of a new Middle East. However, CNN's coverage of the event was less focused on the groundbreaking peace agreement and instead shamed White House for holding such an event amid the pandemic. During the network's 3 p.m. program, CNN anchor Brooke Baldwin accused the president of denying science of coronavirus, citing the over 195,000 deaths, citation needed please, and the over 6.5 million cases, citation needed please, in the U.S. She later negatively emphasized the hundreds of people that attended the outdoor White House event and knocked the president for holding a packed indoor campaign event in Arizona. Baldwin highlighted that these events have taken place following the released recordings of Trump's interviews with Bob Woodward, who, in the early months of the pandemic, spoke about the dangers of the virus with the veteran journalist while striking a different tone publicly at the time. She then turned it to CNN White House correspondent Caitlin Collins, who was accompanied by an on-air graphic that read, "Trump holds White House event with large crowd, little social distancing." Collins reported that there were more masks at the event than previous ones, but credited foreign delegations who wanted to adhere to stricter protocols. She noted that many top officials who attended the event were seen not wearing masks, including Attorney General William Barr, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, and Coronavirus Task Force member Dr. Scott Atlas. She went on to compare Israel's handling of the outbreak, which has relaunched a nationwide lockdown due to a resurgence of the virus, requiring Israelis to stay within 1,500 feet of their house, stressing that the rules are much different for President Trump and his administration. "It's a striking difference, isn't it?" Baldwin reacted. The CNN anchor then welcomed Dr. Rob Davidson, who she billed as an emergency room physician, without disclosing that he was previously a Democratic congressional candidate in 2018, to pile on the president, suggesting that he doesn't care about the potential health risks from the White House event. And yes, now we've all seen a lot of what's in there. Al Jazeera and a couple of other Middle East outlets do have the full text of the agreement out there, which I will be looking into as I go along with all of this. But yes, there have been protests left and right over what actually happened with the peace deal, rather than focusing on the fact, like, I've seen people complain about the fact, well, we must have spent a bunch of money off into this. Would you rather spend the money, or would you rather get the troops home? Would you rather settle the Middle East so we can get more troops home? Human life, money. Human life, money. I don't know. That's an easy decision for me. I don't like the spending of the money, but human life I hold in a much, much higher regard. And other people that are just protesting. I've got another one here, a tweet that we're going to read a little bit later on, talking about people protesting over the fact that it was Trump that did it, because, I mean, they want peace, they just want a Democrat to broker it. But let's see what else we have here. So yeah, that's Fox News' take. Jared Kushner is here, and he is going to offer the worst take possible because he's Jared fucking Kushner. Kushner on Middle East peace deals. The people in the region are tired of war, from Paul LeBlanc. President Trump's senior advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, hailed the U.S. brokered peace treaties between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain on Tuesday as the beginning of a new Middle East, and signaled that the Trump administration is making progress in getting more countries in the region, including Saudi Arabia, to recognize Israel. Yeah, there's already talks that Saudi Arabia is going to come up and recognize Israel, which is huge. His comments came hours after a White House ceremony dubbed the Abraham Accords marked the first Middle East White House peace signing in more than 2 decades. I think we had a very good breakthrough. What's happened is in the Middle East, the deals have been so well received. That's what helped Bahrain go quickly. We saw how well the deal was received in the UAE and throughout the Muslim world. The people in the region are tired of war, Kushner told CNN's Wolf Blitzer on the Situation Room. They're tired of conflict. They want to move forward and see bridging this gap and getting a better understanding between countries as a way to move forward. Asked especially about the prospect of Saudi Arabia recognizing Israel, Kushner pointed to Trump's relationship with the country's leadership and touted a lot of changes in the last 3 years, quite frankly. Also, when we put our vision for peace, you saw the Palestinian leadership reject it before it even came out, before they knew what was in it, he said. So, people are getting a little tired with the tactics played by the Palestinian leaders. They want to help the Palestinian people, but they're going to allow them to hold back the national interest of these different countries. Trump has praised Kushner for his role in securing the deal to bring the UAE and Israel together to achieve normalization, which entails the establishment of political and economic ties for the first time in both countries' histories. So, okay, maybe Kushner didn't do so bad off of this one. He could have done worse. He has done worse. I still don't understand why he's in the position, but hey, as long as the fighting is stopping, how can you complain at this point? But we'll see how long that lasts too, because, I mean, there hasn't been peace over there since Abraham was walking around. Which that's a good 5,000 years. So, that's what we're seeing up off of this. Now we will read the tweet from Ariel Gold with Jewish characters, hashtag the Jewish vote. 7K morning run in D.C. to get ready to protest Trump. Netanyahu, Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain today outside the White House. All my friends in D.C. join me here at 11 to 3 at BLM Plaza. And JJMTL has the top comment off of this, almost immediately after that. Protesting the signing of a peace treaty. Do you prefer a state of war? And that's just it. No, they don't prefer a state of war. They want to see the peace in the Middle East because they've been bitching about it for 36 years at this point. They just don't want Donald Trump to be the one to broker it. They don't want any Republican to broker it, but they especially don't want a political outsider to do it. So, yeah, no, this isn't blatantly partisan at all. Not even a little bit. No, not at all. All right, let's keep going here from CNN. An opinion piece that is allegedly coming from Joe Biden. There's a smarter way to be tough on Iran. Opinion by Joe Biden. Opinion by Joe Biden's staffer. Writing, or ghostwriting for Joe Biden. When Donald Trump ran for president, he promised a better deal to constrain Iran's nuclear program and pledged to pressure Tehran into curbing its aggressive behavior across the Middle East, like so many of President Trump's promises. Those proved to be just empty words. Instead, he recklessly tossed away a policy that was working to keep America safe and replaced it with one that has worsened the threat. This past month has proven that Trump's Iran policy is a dangerous failure. At the UN, Trump could not rally a single one of America's closest allies to extend the UN arms embargo on Iran. Next, Trump tried to unilaterally reimpose UN sanctions on Iran, only to have virtually all the UN Security Council members unite to reject his gambit. Now there are reports that Iran has stockpiled 10 times as much enriched uranium as it had when President Barack Obama and I left office. We urgently need to change this course. Well, you know, they did have a bunch of money for research because somebody in the room, and I'm not going to name names and I'm not going to point fingers, but somebody in the room here worked for a president that sent pallets of cash by plane in the dead of night. I don't know who that could be, but somebody in this room did that. I have no illusions about the challenges the regime in Iran poses to America's security interests, to our friends and our partners, and to its own people, but I guess I didn't silence my phone. But there is a smart way to be tough on Iran, and there is Trump's way. He ignored our closest allies and walked away, alone, without a plan, from a deal that put the world's eyes and ears inside Iran's nuclear program, and it was verifiably blocking Iran's pathway to a nuclear weapon. He has repeatedly ratcheted up tensions, bringing us closer to another Middle Eastern war without a realistic strategy or endgame. Really? Really? Because I'm pretty sure he just signed a deal with Israel and the UAE and Bahrain, with Saudi Arabia getting ready to jump on the fray, which Saudi Arabia holds some of the biggest landmass in the region, to have peace in the region. He has lurched into risky escalations that endangered our troops and then downplayed their brain injuries as headaches. By any objective measure, Trump's maximum pressure has been a boon to the regime in Iran and a bust for America's interests. So, Biden wants to be tougher on Iran, and yet he and Barack just shipped pallets of cash over there. I don't understand what the end game is. I mean, this isn't like 1980 when the media wanted to sanitize a news story, so they just stopped reporting on it. We have the internet. We have people that remember. There's 4chan. There's Reddit. People remember what happened over the last administration. You can't get away with just saying, oh, well, we're going to be tough on that and, don't watch the news until we get it all sanitized. So and of course, this was not Joe Biden writing this. I promise you, this was somebody ghostwriting for him. So that's what we're seeing up off of that here. I'm not going to go too much further into that one. Let's keep going here from Fox News. Trump calls Mattis, Kelly, Bolton disgruntled former employees in a town hall from Tyler Olson. President Trump on Tuesday night called his ex-chief of staff John Kelly and his first defense secretary James Mattis, both retired Marine generals, as well as former National Security Advisor John Bolton, disgruntled former employees over criticism the three have leveled at him since their departures from his administration. Trump made the comments in response to a question during ABC News town hall event with undecided voters after host George Stephanopoulos asked the president to respond to the trio's broadsides. These are people that I let go. These are disgruntled former employees, to put it in a nice way, Trump said after Stephanopoulos listed off criticism. From the group of former defense officials, Bolton called Trump a danger to the U.S. Mattis has said Trump aims to divide Americans, and Kelly has publicly sided with Mattis in the feud between the former defense secretary and the president. And all three of them are fucking war hawks. Mattis was a highly overrated general. Didn't do the job. Didn't do good on ISIS. I took over 100% of the ISIS caliphate. I had the people that I wanted in. Mattis was fired, as you know, by President Obama, and I fired him also, Trump said. Stephanopoulos noted that Mattis says he resigned, but Trump repeated that he fired Mattis. The president continued, if you look at John Bolton, all he wanted to do was blow people up. He wanted to go to war with everybody, and frankly, I used him very nicely. I bring him into the room with negotiation. When people saw him, they say, oh wow, he's going to want to go to war. Yeah, that's probably fact-check true, too. Shake John Bolton and somebody, realizing that he's going to do everything he can to go to war, and that everybody will fall in the line and say, oh, no, we don't want to go to war. And then fire him because absolutely John Bolton wants to do nothing but go to fucking war. The answer came during a discussion about a story from The Atlantic that reported Trump had called World War I dead suckers and losers, as he canceled a 2018 trip to a cemetery for American war dead in France, allegedly over disdain for the soldiers. Trump said the statements attributed to him were never made by me, and that the reason for the cancellation of the cemetery visit was the weather. So, this town hall was another one. Now, ABC News had the story, but it was just fact-checking President Trump's town hall, and nobody else touched this. I haven't seen the town hall yet at this point. I do want to take some time and go and have a look at what happened there. So, I will do that probably later on today. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow, because I actually took tomorrow off work because they forced me to, because I have a floating holiday sitting there that was about to expire. But I do want to see what was going on into this, and why, oh why, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all buried the town hall. Nobody's talking about a word about this thing. Nobody has a word to say about the fact that the president got up and sat in front of people, some of whom probably didn't like him very much, and answered questions. Now, I saw some reports that, he was just stumbling around. He was, you know what, if he was really stumbling around that much, that would be top story on CNN. And it wasn't. But that's what we have to see on the town hall so far off of this. Let's keep going. From the Daily Wire. Can men be women? Jill Biden ripped apart for Vote for Science tweet. From Amanda Prestigiacomo. Dr. Jill Biden, wife of the Democratic presidential nominee and former Vice President Joe Biden, posted a tweet Tuesday imploring Americans to vote for science by confusing are a confusing ask, considering Mr. Biden's anti-science positions surrounding gender and the unborn for starters. This is not listed as an opinion piece, but this is the Daily Wire, so this is pretty much going to be an opinion piece. The internet noticed the disconnect and pummeled Mrs. Biden with questions pertaining to science and the Democrats and her husband's platform. Cool, the Daily Wire's Emily Zanotti responded. What's your definition of when life begins? Pro-life advocate Obianuju Ekioka similarly asked, so when does life begin? Are preborn children living? Asked Kevin McCullough. Back in June, the former VP, once a self-described pro-life Democrat, staked out a far-left position on abortion, stating that he supports abortion under any circumstance, because Planned Parenthood is paying off his campaign. Women's health care rights have been under attack as states across the country have passed extreme laws restricting women's constitutional rights to choice under any circumstance. Biden said in a statement, lauding the Supreme Court for its decision in June Medical Services versus Russo. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court reaffirmed that states cannot put into place laws that unduly burden a woman's right to make her own health care decision with her doctor. The science-related hounding continued against Mrs. Biden. Embryology, biology, or, asked podcast host Allie Beth Stuckey. Can a man be a woman? McCullough posted. Author and Daily Wire podcast host Ben Shapiro wrote, Can men be women? How many genders are there? Commented conservative writer Jim Treacher. Weird flex, considering Democrats hate President Trump so much they're peddling a bizarre, baseless conspiracy theory about a coronavirus vaccine, rather than listening to the scientists who say a vaccine will be safe and effective, said Jake Schneider, Deputy Director of Rapid Response for the Trump campaign. And they went on to go talk about Kamala Harris saying that she won't take any vaccine that's approved under a Trump administration, probably citing the fact that she thinks that Trump is in there mixing bleach into vaccines because he once said that people should inject bleach. He never said that, but of course that's what they've been trying to peddle you for the last 4 months. So yeah. This is the party of science, and some of this comes from the fact that Scientific American has endorsed a presidential candidate for the first time in 175 years, which probably came from some political pressure. People threatening to boycott the magazine unless they endorse Joe Biden. I think there's a lot of that going on right now, I'm not going to lie. So, that's what we're seeing up off of this one. I don't think we're going to see it for Monday, so let's drop off to this one into the next one here. From the New York Post, Joe Biden admits Trump is helping the middle class amid the pandemic, from Ebony Bowden. During a low-energy roundtable with veterans in Florida Tuesday, Joe Biden repeated his dubious claim that he removed 150,000 troops from Iraq. As vice president, as he also admitted, Trump seemed to be helping the middle class amid the coronavirus pandemic, an apparent oversight given his pro-union blue-collar platform. Biden, 77, who took no questions from reporters, could barely be heard through his mask, even though he had a microphone, made his first visit to the Sunshine State amid polls, which show his support among Hispanics, who make up a fifth of Florida's population, is trailing Trump. At the discussion in Tampa, Biden spoke about his late son Beau Biden's military record, and also touted his legacy as Barack Obama's vice president, recounting how he got permission to withdraw 150,000 soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan. I don't really think that's how that works. I think there's something else going on there, but okay. It was particularly difficult when watching what happened during the heavy deployments back in Iraq and Afghanistan before I was able to get permission to bring home 150,000 troops, he said. The number of U.S. troops in Iraq, a war Biden voted for, did fall in Obama's first term from nearly 150,000 to nearly zero. But Biden failed to mention that 5,000 American soldiers were sent back to the region in 2011 after ISIS gained a foothold in Iraq because of the lack of U.S. soldiers. The Obama-Biden administration also sent troops to Syria and Libya. Biden spoke passionately about mental health issues, traumatic injuries, and suicide among veterans, and yet none of his own mental health issues. but repeatedly cut himself off, telling the veterans that he was talking for too long, and bizarrely ended his speech by comparing himself to a poor relative. The bad news is, I show up when I'm invited, Biden joked at the end of the round table. I'm like the poor relative. The poor relative shows up, eat all your food, stay longer than they should. The wealthy ones don't come. I'm like the poor relative. I show. What? He also spent a portion of the speech bashing President Trump's response to the coronavirus pandemic, falsely claiming he was solely focused on the stock market and questioned his payroll tax cut. He is focused only on making sure the stock market stays up and make sure it doesn't decline, because then it looks bad and the economy begins to droop for the very people he most represents, Biden claimed. Honing in on the president's desire to introduce a payroll tax cut for struggling Americans, Biden said that Trump was trying to make it look like he's actually helping some people that are struggling in the middle class area. It'll put more money in their pockets now, and they say, oh God, he's doing something to help me, Biden said. He wants to be able to send that $1,200 check out per person because he literally signs it and then his name is on it. With just 49 days until the election, Biden and Trump are neck and neck in the Sunshine State polls, and the former VP leading by just 1.6%, according to the Real Clear Politics polling average. Yeah. He's out of his basement, and he's saying stupid shit. Who would have thought that this was going to come? But yes, of course, they let him up out of the basement, and he started saying shit. The best thing for Biden to do right now would just be to shut up. If I was a Biden campaign advisor, the best thing, because, it's going to cause him to tank in the polls if he just stays in the basement and watches C-SPAN and watches MSNBC kiss his ass. That is going to be the best thing for him. Even if it does tank his polls a little bit, when he gets out and talks, it's going to tank him worse. I don't see how he can win this unless there's that much TDS around the country. But yes, they still think that he can win it. Alright, let's keep going. From Fox News, Biden panned for playing Despacito at Hispanic Heritage Month event. From Joseph A. Wolfson. Joe Biden raised eyebrows on Tuesday evening over his attempt to appeal to Hispanic voters at a campaign event in Kissimmee, Florida. The event was meant to commemorate the Hispanic Heritage Month. The Democratic candidate was the last speaker to take the podium, following several supporters, including Eva Longoria, Ricky Martin, and Louis Fonsi. However, when Biden approached the podium, he paused and reached for his phone in his pocket. I just have one thing to say, Biden began as he looked down at his phone and said, hang on here. And then he held his phone to the microphone, which began playing the 2017 hit song Despacito from Fonsi, who had introduced the candidate after roughly 15 seconds of bobbing his head and gently dancing behind the podium. He paused the music. I'll tell you what, if I had talent of any of these people, I'd be elected president by acclamation, Biden chuckled. Critics piled on the former VP in the cringe moment. Oh my, CBS News correspondent Ed O'Keefe reacted. Does Joe Biden realize that Despacito means slowly, fits well with Slow Joe, Trump campaign senior advisor Mercedes Schlapp quipped. This was so unbelievably cringe, tweeted Ariel Davidson, a senior policy analyst at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America. Earlier in the day, Biden had turned heads when he bungled the Democratic ticket, touting plans under a Harris-Biden administration. He also mistakenly confused Iran and Iraq when referring to fallen American soldiers in a speech geared towards veterans, saying U.S. troops died in Iran and Afghanistan. Well, I'm sure some U.S. troops have died in Iran, but yeah, no, I understand the meaning of why they wanted to do Iraq. Why would you play that from your cell phone, though? Cringy. And second off, yes, that's just ammunition right there. Slowly. For a guy who's going into Alzheimer's. I understand the sentiment. It's a major pandering move from a voter base that he desperately needs to hang on to, especially in Florida, where a lot of Hispanic voting base is coming from Cuba because they're escaping communism, and violent communists have the loudest voice on social media. So that may lead people to believe that that's actually the platform the Democrat Party is going for. I don't believe it actually is. A lot of people believe that that's what these neolibs are actually doing, but for the most part, they're just saying shit to try and court these voters. But because they're trying to court these voters, that could turn off a lot of Cubans. So yes, I understand trying to pander to get to this, but I mean, when you're just blatantly pandering like that, people are going to see through it. You're an almost 80-year-old white guy. Pander a little harder, Biden. All right, let's keep going here from ABC News. Close contest in Wisconsin. In Minnesota, not so much. Poll. Biden has a wide lead in Minnesota, while Trump draws even in Wisconsin, from Gary Langer. It's a close contest in Wisconsin, heading into the final 7 weeks of the 2020 presidential campaign, while women, suburban residents, and independents are among the groups lifting Joe Biden to a substantial lead in Minnesota, according to a pair of new ABC News Washington Post polls. Aggregate. Single polls are outliers. Even a pair of polls are outliers. Views on the economy and the coronavirus pandemic define the race, and the course of both may prove decisive and turn out as a wild card. As is the case nationally, President Trump benefits from much greater enthusiasm among his supporters, who are far more apt to plan to vote on Election Day. That makes Biden's ability to mobilize early and absentee voting central to the outcome. Trump won Wisconsin in 2016 by fewer than 23,000 votes out of 3 million cast. Today, Biden has a 52% support among likely voters there, with 46% for Trump. Not statistically significant difference between, given the survey's margin of sampling error. In Minnesota, by contrast, Biden holds a clear advantage, 57% to 41%, and in what's been hoped for Trump pickup after his narrow 45,000 vote loss 4 years ago. Results are very similar among the broader pool of registered voters, with Biden-Trump at 50 to 46% in Wisconsin and 57% to 40% in Minnesota. In this poll, produced for ABC by Langer Research Associates. So, and yeah, that's what they're showing here. Among registered voters and likely voters. I don't know, guys. I think it's a lot tighter than this. And it's, I mean, just driving around Wisconsin and even a little bit into Minnesota, because I've been into there a little bit during this election cycle. I do see Biden signs around here. But they're just the little regular yard sign. Just little guy, like you normally see in campaign. For Trump, I drive by a massive Trump flag every single day on my way to work. Just this gigantic Trump flag. When I go to the campground where my parents camp, there I pass at least 6 of them on the back road that I drive by. Just these massive flags. One of my coworkers wears a MAGA hat, a Trump 2020 hat when he's not underneath a truck, like when he's going to his car and from his car at the beginning and end of the day. He's got a blue Trump 2020 hat. I see the enthusiasm for the Trump voters. I see absolutely no enthusiasm for Biden other than throw a yard sign out and hope for the best. So, I don't see the enthusiasm for Biden. I don't see where these people coming in these polls are coming from. And I don't see the tight race that we're seeing. Now, and like I said, I'm not going to vote for President Trump. I have no plans to do so. But I'm not voting for any presidential candidate either. But that doesn't mean I don't see the writing on the walls. And I don't see what other people are going to do. So, we shall see what happens in 48 days for that. Let's keep going here from the Daily Wire. Petition launched to recall Socialist Seattle Council member. City Council votes to pay for her legal defense, from Hank Berrien. On August 18th, a petition was launched to recall Seattle Council member Kshama Sawant, an open socialist, from her position. On Tuesday, the Seattle City Council member voted to pay for Sawant's legal defense 7-1, with Council member Deborah Juarez the only member to vote against the idea. Council member Alex Peterson stated Council member Sawant was reelected less than a year ago. Adequate legal counsel should be available to duly elected official defending a recall petition, whether or not they can afford such representation. Councilmember Andrew Lewis echoed. I want to be clear that I'm voting yes, and I'm, in doing so, not commenting on the merits of the recall's allegation, and voting for the values of our democracy here in Seattle. It's a slippery slope if we start picking and choosing who does or who doesn't receive this legal representation. Really? Now, and this is absolutely the most socialist thing you could think. We want the Politburo to get the best legal representation. So, when I was 18 and facing down a felony charge at the time, that was before I took a lawyer on retainer. But when I was 18 and facing down a felony charge, I had to pick up a law school graduate who was trying to cut his teeth and hoping for the best. I had to take the public defender option. Who, city councils like this pick up to be public defenders to come out and give legal representation to people who cannot afford the legal representation. And if it's good enough for the little people, and this recalled official can't afford regular legal representation, then I think the public defender should be good enough for the public official as well. Why is the city council voting to pay legal fees for the best lawyer possible? I don't like any of this. If you like the public option so much, then take the public defender, and if you don't like the public defender, hire one that you like. That's what I have to say off of this one. That is. But once again, this is what actually happens under socialism. Yes, they make a public option available for you, but the people in the Politburo, in the political class, the people that the politicians like, do still get special treatment. So that's what we're seeing up off of this here. And yeah, if you're getting recalled, and you really do want to sit down, take the public defender. Take the public defender and show us how much faith you have in that system. Or, alternatively, this is the other thing. See if somebody will take your case pro bono. See if some lawyer out there believes in you, believes in the system so much, especially in Seattle. It shouldn't be that hard to find. He'll take the case pro bono. Kyle Rittenhouse has pro bono legal defense team. One of the best in the state. Because somebody believed in his cause so much that he decided to make up a legal team pro bono. What is it? L. Lynn Wood is paying for everything out of his own pocket to make sure that Rittenhouse has the best legal team possible. Because he believes in the case so strongly. So yeah, that shouldn't be too hard to do. Alright, next one here. From the New York Post, Pelosi vows to keep House in session after Democrats spike Senate COVID relief deal. From the New York Post, from Ebony Bowden. Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Tuesday vowed to keep the House in session until a deal is reached on COVID relief, after her own Democrats blocked a $650 billion package offered by Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Pressure is mounting on lawmakers to pass desperately needed relief for American families, including another round of $1,200 checks. With 60 million people filing jobless claims during the COVID-19 pandemic. We have to stay here until we have a bill, Pelosi told lawmakers on a Tuesday morning House Democratic Caucus conference call, according to multiple reports. The current session is due to end on October 2nd, allowing members to campaign in their districts ahead of the November 3rd election. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer clarified that congressional leadership would stay in town and members would only be called back if a deal was reached. But aides on both sides of the aisle told the Post that they were pessimistic any compromise would be reached before the election, blaming political grandstanding. Talks between the White House, Pelosi, and the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer stalled last month after Democrats last week rejected McConnell's $650 billion skinny bill that included $300 supplements payments to the unemployed. The GOP bill was a piece of garbage, one source familiar with the negotiations told the Post of McConnell's skinny bill. There was no funding for state and local governments, no transit, nothing for testing, tracing, nothing. But a GOP aide said that McConnell's bill, which included a crucial $300 unemployment insurance and $150 billion for schools, was perfectly reasonable and should have had bipartisan support. Democrats have been unwilling to budge on certain issues included in the $3.4 trillion HEROES Act package, which passed in May, including funding for federal and state governments. Long Island GOP Congressman Lee Zeldin told the Post he believed a deal could be cut instantly, but Pelosi's $900 billion ask for state and federal funding was holding him a win. Not to mention the fact that that bill was so laden with pork, and it outlawed voter ID, which is unconstitutional. I mean, the HEROES Act would be tied up in the Supreme Court through the election if they were to manage to even pass it. Not to mention the president would veto it instantly, and they can't get a veto-proof majority on this. The American people. I mean, the progressives, of course, want the federal government to spend money, and even some of the center Democrats, or center Republicans, center Democrats, want to see that money. Some of them do need this money. But for the most part, the easiest way to get the money into the hands of the people is to tell your Democrat governors to get the gloves off and get people back to work. Even under our governance, Tony Evers making his unconstitutional mask mandate and his unconstitutional lockdowns. Our state is doing very well, and they're hiring left and right. I am getting emails left and right from ZipRecruiter, from Monster, from Indeed, begging for people, because there is a class of people out there that doesn't want to go to work, that they don't want to go in because they're scared of the pandemic. So, on top of the fact that these businesses are opening back up, they're out begging for people. And we are coming into a point of a bidding war for people. Take the gloves off, let the people go back to work, let them assess their own risk assessment. And then you probably wouldn't need. I mean, here's the other thing. For a stimulus, instead of going out and universally mailing out checks to everybody, here's another thought for this. Give people the opportunity to apply for a relief check. Set aside, I don't know, a few $100 billion, which I can't believe I'm even telling the government to spend that, but set aside a few $100 billion so the people that actually need it can go out and apply for it. And the people that don't can go watch The Price is Right. And once again, the big one for me is there's no reason to do this on a 6-month or a 12-month extension. Do it 4 weeks at a time. We're 7 weeks out from an election, so do it 4 weeks at a time. And then come back in 4 weeks and renew another bill, if you need it. I mean, this is all going to go away by November 4th anyway. So, yeah. There's no reason to do this the way they're doing it. But they're going to insist on keep doing it. Alright, I got a few more here. We're running up on the hour, and I really do want to go over and see what Ignoramus is doing over there that was so spicy from this. But this is one of the big stories here. Chinese virologist, China's government intentionally released COVID-19 from Sam Dorman. Now, this is an extension of what this virologist has already claimed, because she did claim that it was man-made. But from what I understand, this is the first time that she's saying that this was intentionally released on top of everything else. So let's hear what Sam Dorman has to say about this. The Chinese government intentionally manufactured and released the COVID-19 virus that led to mass shutdowns and deaths across the world, a top virologist and whistleblower told Fox News host Tucker Carlson on Tuesday. Carlson specifically asked Dr. Li Meng Yan whether she believed the Chinese Communist Party released the virus on purpose. Yes, of course, it's intentionally, she responded on Tucker Carlson tonight. Yan said more evidence could be released, but pointed to her own high-ranking position at the World Health Organization reference lab as a reason to trust her allegation. I worked in the WHO reference lab, which is the top coronavirus lab in the world, in the University of Hong Kong. And the thing is, I get deeply into such investigation in secret from the early beginning of this outbreak. I had my intelligence because I also get my own unit network in China involved in the hospital. Also, I work with the top coronavirus virologist in the world, she said. So together with my experience, I can tell you this is created in the lab, and also it was spread to the world to make such damage. Yan's comments conflicted with the opinion of Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and White House coronavirus advisor, who previously cast doubt into the idea that the virus was artificially created. In May, he told the National Geographic, if you look at the evolution of the virus in bats, and what's out there now is very, very strongly leading towards the virus could not have been artificially or deliberately manipulated the way mutations have naturally evolved. Other scientists have panned the idea that COVID-19 served as sort of a bioweapon or was released by the lab. Fox News previously reported on Yan back in July when she blew the whistle on China's alleged attempts to suppress information about its handling of the virus. With a vast network of contacts in Chinese medical facilities, Yan attempted to gather more information about the virus as China blocked overseas experts from conducting research in the country. So, yes, this woman's been in the public eye for a little while. I can't believe the CCP has not caught up with her yet at this point. That's a little bit surprising to me off of this, but nonetheless, they're going out, putting her name out there, putting her face out there, and I don't know what happened in the lab. I have every reason to trust that she did this, but once again, if this is the truth, then there's going to be a lot bigger implications to come up out of this. This is not going to be just get a vaccine out there, get everybody back healthy, and then hope for the best. This actually is going to have some far-reaching consequences if this is intentional. So, and like I said, this is definitely an upshot from yesterday's news story that said that just that it was man-made. Now that it's being claimed that it's man-made and intentional, that does change the way the world looks at it. All right. In retaliation, from Newsweek, Twitter suspends account of Chinese virologist who claimed coronavirus was made in a lab. From Jason Murdoch. Twitter has suspended the account of a Chinese academic who suggested COVID-19 was made in a lab and was intentionally released. The social media profile of Dr. Li Meng Yan, with just under 60,000 followers, went dark this week as the scientist claimed to have scientific evidence the Chinese government was involved in the manufacturing of the highly infectious novel coronavirus. A preprint report pushed online this week by Dr. Yan and 3 colleagues contained a series of unsubstantiated claims about the origins of the global pandemic. Dr. Yan and her colleagues appear affiliated with the Rule of Law Society, a group founded by Steve Bannon, the former advisor to President Trump. On Tucker Carlson tonight, Tuesday, where Yan was labeled as a whistleblower, she claimed that the COVID-19 is a man-made virus and not from nature, echoing comments previously made by President Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Dr. Yan said the virus was manufactured by China. I have evidence to show they can do it, what they have done, and how they did it, she told the Fox host. The scientific world also keeps silent, works together with the CCP. They don't want people to know this truth. That's why I get suspended. I get suppressed. I am the target that Chinese Communist Party wants disappeared. Twitter declined to comment on the individual case. Yeah, no, that is a little bit draconian. 2 + 2 = 5. We've always been at war with Oceania. This is 1984 level stuff. And you knew we were going to get there with the way that people were panning things throughout the Trump presidency and even what we were seeing throughout the Obama presidency. You knew we were going to get here at some point. I just didn't think it was going to come this quick. All right. From CNN, Louisville has settled Brianna Taylor's wrongful death lawsuit. From Christina Carrega, Mark Morales, and Eric Levinson. The city of Louisville has settled a wrongful death lawsuit filed by the family of Brianna Taylor, the 26-year-old former EMT killed by police 6 months ago. A source told CNN on Tuesday the agreement was a multi-million-dollar settlement. Taylor family attorney Sam Aguilar also confirmed to CNN that there is a settlement in the case. The city's response to this case has been delayed and it's been frustrating, but the fact that they've been willing to sit down and talk. Significant reform was a step in the right direction and hopefully a turning point, he said. Taylor's family sued the city after Louisville Metro Police officers broke down the door to Taylor's apartment and fatally shot her while executing a late-night no-knock warrant in a narcotics investigation on March 13th. Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher is expected to announce the settlement later Tuesday in a joint press conference with the Taylor family attorneys. Speaking to News Radio 840 WHAS on Tuesday morning, he declined to comment on the settlement, saying, "I don't have anything to announce on that at this time." So, yeah, this is... First off, we don't have all the evidence in this case. We absolutely don't have all of the evidence for this. This is a situation where we've seen the report. Now, of course, nobody over on the left, especially over on CNN, is going to point you to the report and show that Taylor was a person of interest in all of this. They're not going to show the report that the police did knock, even though they had a no-knock warrant, that they went by the book, because now all of this is get these people arrested. But the biggest part of this, the one that makes me smile just a little bit off of this, is the fact that now the taxpayers of Louisville are going to be paying the family of Brianna Taylor. Because the government doesn't have any money. The government spends your money. How's that for justice? If that's what you really want to call this, justice. It's not justice. You're just taking money out of the hands of the people who want to live in your city and giving it to one family that lives in your city. Good job. Absolutely good job. By the way, if you haven't read the report, read the report. It's amazing. The narrative that they're trying to peddle you versus what actually happened with this. All right, next one here. From the Daily Wire. Minneapolis City Council panics over surge in violence after demonizing police. Where are the police? From Ryan Saavedra. The Democrat-controlled Minneapolis City Council is reportedly panicking as violent crime is surging throughout the city after they called for defunding the police department following the death of George Floyd in late May. During a 2-hour Minneapolis City Council meeting on police reform, council members told Police Chief Madaria Arradondo that their constituents are seeing and hearing street racing, which sometimes results in crashes, brazen daylight carjackings, robberies, assaults, and shootings. NPR News reported the number of reported violent crimes like assaults, robberies, and homicides are up compared to 2019, according to MPD crime data. More people have been killed in the cities in the first 9 months of 2020 than were slain in all of last year. Property crimes like burglaries and auto thefts are also up. Incidents of arson have increased 55% over the total at this point in 2019. Residents are asking, where are the police? Said City Council member Jamal Osman. NPR News says that Osman indicated that that he's been flooded with complaints with residents that their calls for help from the police are not being answered. The report said that some City Council members whose constituents live in safer areas are now feeling terrorized. That is the only public safety option that we have at the moment, MPD, Osman said. They rely on MPD, and they're saying that they're nowhere to be seen. City Council President Lisa Bender, who led the charge in the initial calls to defund the police department, complained that she thought the officers were being defiant. This is not new, Bender claimed, but it is very concerning in the current context. The news comes as approximately 100 officers have left the department or taking a leave of absence since the start of the year, more than double the normal rate. Councilmember Philippe Cunningham called out those on the city council who were complaining about the lack of policing after they called for defunding the police department. And that's just it. I mean, yes, people left the police department in droves, wouldn't you? If you were a police officer and the city that you were enforcing wanted you gone, would you stick around or would you leave? So, is that what you would want to do? Or would you stick around and take the abuse? Not to mention the fact that, yes, that's what these people are calling for. Defund the police, get rid of the police, all cops are bastards. Well, here's what happens when you don't have police. And yes, I can't wait to see mass exoduses from these cities where they're calling for the defunding and the elimination of police departments. And if you're in one of these cities, get on out. It's nice out in the suburbs and in the small towns. It's really nice out there. So, absolutely. Keep on doing that. All right, next one here from the New York Post. Protesters demand cops let themselves be stabbed or shot, from Heather McDonald. And yeah, this goes right along with what we were saying. What I was saying off of the last article. Let yourselves be stabbed or shot. Yeah, no, I don't want to stick around. The nation's police officers walked off the job today. It would be hard to blame them. Sunday's anti-cop riots in Lancaster, Pennsylvania have made the current de facto rules of engagement clear. Officers may never defend themselves against lethal force if their attacker is a minority. They should simply accept being shot or stabbed as a penance for their alleged racism. In Lancaster, an officer responded to a domestic violence call at a residence where a man had stabbed 4 people last year. As the officer approached the house, a female escaped out the front door. A man, the suspect from the previous slashings, then emerged and ran at the officer, brandishing a knife over his head. The officer shot him, as the officer was, by all appearances, legally authorized to do, to stop the threat of deadly force. 27-year-old Ricardo Munoz died from the injury. The response from the community after the summer of lethal cop hatred was predictable. Rioters pelted Lancaster cops with bricks, glass bottles, and sharp projectiles, ripped from road barricades. They smashed the windows of police cruisers, the downtown police precinct, the post office, cafes, and stores. They torched a dumpster, dragged from another part of the city. They pulled street signs and bike racks out of the sidewalk to use against the police. Such anarchy, with its photogenic arson, is just the latest chapter in the violence that is now routinely directed at officers during ordinary law enforcement activities, as well as during riots. On August 26th, a driver in the Bronx attacked 2 officers who had asked him to move his car from the fire hydrant, the Post reported. In June, a Baltimore cop was shot in the stomach while trying to break up an illegal house party. In Chicago, officers seeking to arrest drive-by shooters were assaulted and cursed at. And now in Compton, California, 2 sheriff's deputies are hanging on to life after having been shot in the face while sitting in a parked patrol car. And yeah, that is seeming to be what the sentiment is. As long as the perpetrator is a minority, you better not use any sort of lethal force against the person. That's what we saw in Jacob Blake. Dude had a knife, walking around the car after being tased. Richard Brooks, pointing a taser at officers, which could potentially subdue them, leaving the officer open to having his gun stolen and seeing more death. This dude in Lancaster, knife over his head, running at the police officer. What exactly is it that you want them to do? So, and that's what it's like to be in a city right now, especially as a police officer. So that's what we have off of this one. Let's keep going here from CNN. Lewis Hamilton won't stop his fight against racism as FIA rules out investigation into Brianna Taylor t-shirt. By Amanda Davies, Alex Klosak, and George Ramsey. Lewis Hamilton says he remains undeterred in his fight against racial injustice. His comments came as the FIA, Motorsport's global governing body, announced it will not investigate the Formula One champion for wearing a t-shirt honoring Brianna Taylor at the Tucson Grand Prix. Hamilton, a 6-time world champion who claimed the 90th race win of his career on Sunday, wore a t-shirt with the words "Arrest the cops who killed Brianna Taylor" on the front and "Say her name" above a photo of Taylor on the back before the race and the podium ceremony. Having originally said it would be considering the matter, the FIA will instead clarify its guidelines as to what will be permitted for drivers and teams both pre- and post-race. The FIA is aiming to put these guidelines in place ahead of the next race of the 2020 season, which is scheduled to take place in Sochi, Russia, on September 27th. Want you to know I won't stop, I won't let up, I won't give up on using this platform to shed light on what I believe is right, Hamilton wrote on the Instagram. I want to thank those of you who continue to support me and show love. I'm so grateful. But this is a journey for all of us to come together and challenge the world on every level of injustice, not only racial. We can help this make this a better place for our kids and the future generations. Yeah. You're also representing a company when you're doing this. And to be completely honest, and this is, I read the news, and I read politics for a living. This is what I do every single day. I get up and do this. So when I sit down to watch baseball, football, F1 racing, NASCAR, when I sit down to watch sports, I don't want a political lecture. Now, whether or not you wear the t-shirt is between you and FIA. It appears that FIA doesn't want you to do so. I have no problem with you doing that if that's what you want to do. I just won't tune into FIA because I don't want the political lecture. And there are a lot of people that are having the same sentiment at this point. They don't want the political lecture. They just want to sit here and escape from life for a little while and enjoy the sports. But yet, we're going to sit here and watch sloganeering on the NFL field. A giant BLM mural sitting outside Fenway Stadium. And this guy wearing a t-shirt. So, that's between you and the FIA. I just won't be tuning in. All right. I got just a couple more here. Then we'll do something that I'm thankful for and head on out of here. From Fox News, Hurricane Sally makes landfall in Alabama as Category 2 storm. Life-threatening flooding is expected. From Travis Fredschwan and David Arrow over at Fox News. Hurricane Sally roared ashore the northern Gulf Coast early Wednesday morning, making landfall as the storm threatens to bring devastating flooding to the region. The National Hurricane Center says Hurricane Sally made landfall at 4:45 a.m. CDT near Gulf Shores, Alabama, as a Category 2 storm with maximum sustained winds of 105 miles an hour. The hurricane has left thousands without power near coastal areas of Alabama and the Florida Panhandle region. Catastrophic and life-threatening flooding will likely along portions of the north-central Gulf Coast, the NHC said. So this is going to be just a shorty because they're throwing up blog posts as they go. But yes, we will be watching this one closely and seeing where we can offer aid, either financial or otherwise through attention or GoFundMes or various any other points of charity. I kind of don't want to use GoFundMe because they're blocking the Rittenhouse charities right now, but there are plenty of other crowdfunding and charity sites out there. So we will do what we can, especially over here on the Freedom Scoop Network, to get charity out to these, help them rebuild down there, and help get people back into their homes. All right, and the last one here. California has lost 70 of their tax-paying citizens at this point. From the deadline. The Daily Wire to move headquarters from Los Angeles to Nashville, from Ted Johnson. The Daily Wire, the conservative media company started by Ben Shapiro, Jeremy Boring, and Caleb Robinson, plans to move its headquarters from Los Angeles to Nashville. Boring said that the move was being made due to declining quality of life in the city, including a housing cost and homelessness. The publisher's 75 employees, based in Los Angeles, are being given until October 1st to decide whether to make the move, Boring said. He said it looked like about 80% would make the move. The site has grown substantially since its launch in 2015 and was the top publisher on Facebook in July, according to Newship. The Ben Shapiro Show has ranked in the top 10 podcasts this year, according to Podtrac. The reasons for the company's plan to move are also political. Boring, who has lived in Los Angeles for the past 20 years, blamed the city's leadership for failing to address the ongoing urban problems and also cited the state's high income taxes. The dream of California and the weather were enough to draw us all here and keep us here, even when it was hard, he said. But it's hubris to think that you can keep making it worse and worse for people and that somehow the idea of temperate winters will be enough to make them stay forever. He said that he plans to move in November and much of the staff will follow after that. LA benefits from the fact that while it leans left, it draws individualists to try and find their fame and seek fortunes. They're an ornery bunch, but they aren't so ornery that this out-of-control government can't break them. He said that they considered moving to Texas but chose Nashville because it offers the creative talent we need to keep growing the business. We were shocked by the reception when we announced the move, Boring said, but of course our employees see all of the same challenges we see, and it's even harder for them to afford this place. The Daily Wire has been headquartered in Sherman Oaks. Boring and Robinson are co-CEOs, and Shapiro is its editor emeritus. So yes, and ever since I started reading the Daily Wire regularly, ever since I started following the Shapiro Show, since I started my journey down through alternative media, I started to realize that if they're really in LA, which I didn't believe at first, they're not going to last there for long. Because LA is just going to keep turning the screws on them. And they did. They just kept turning the screws. Now they're keeping up lockdowns. These people have to work from home, which, it's not a huge deal because with the production team that they have, they can still put on a decent production while working from home. But still, the taxes, the screws, the homelessness, the lockdowns, everything else. I would be fleeing California if I lived in California. Thankfully, I don't. And I would be getting out of some of these big, woke, horrible places. Wokeness kills, and it kills small business. So, good on them. I'm glad to see them up out of here. I'm very glad to see the boon that's going to be coming for the city of Nashville and the state of Tennessee. So, absolutely. It'll be a wonderful thing. I think it's going to be good for these guys. It kind of sucks that some of them are going to have to leave their ancestral homes. I mean, Shapiro grew up in Los Angeles. But what will be, will be. And I think this is going to be the best for them. All right, and that's going to be it for news for the day here. And the last thing that we do on Wednesdays is something that I'm thankful for. And I do have something I'm thankful for here. So I have been working with a campaign staffer for the Joe Jorgensen campaign for the last couple months. She has been a godsend to me, making it easier for me to get things scheduled, live my life around the podcast without having to run out and schedule a new guest every week and make an itinerary working specifically toward that guest. Now I actually have a person I can work with. I can actually have a little bit of fun with. Somebody whose personality I know and somebody whose personality I can tailor the podcast around. I've been very thankful for her for a long time, but I'm also thankful right now because every once in a while she has to miss a show because of meetings, because we're running up into election time. We are running up into that point where she is getting to her busiest point, and she's got to miss a few shows. And I still have an army of people who are willing to jump up at a moment's notice at some point. Kevin Castor from Monday, who was on the show on Monday, literally joined the show on a moment's notice for me. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for people who are willing to jump up and be guests on the show very quickly with very little notice and still are very informed and can have a good conversation about that. When I was doing Ed's World and had a different guest on every week, I built up a great community of people who are willing to help in and outside the Freedom Scoop Media Group. So I'm very thankful for the people who are willing to help me out and who are willing to make sure that the show goes off without a hitch every week. So thank you guys for that. And that is going to be it for the day here. We will be back here tomorrow with more news and more commentary. I'm going to head on over and check out the Daily Ignoramus and see what Steven has to say for the rest of the day here. So we will see you tomorrow. And we'll be doing gaming a little bit early, so it won't be at the normal 8 o'clock Central Time because, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I took tomorrow off because I had a floating holiday. So I'm thinking maybe we'll do 6 Central Time, go 6 to 10 on that. We'll be doing some more New Vegas tomorrow night. Otherwise, we will see you tomorrow morning for more Contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.